Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins, as always, and I'm going to be your host. In our studio, we have Cliff Beach. How are you today, sir?
Amazing, Rick. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
I love when my guests come on. They say I'm amazing. That's inspirational, man. Thank you for that.
Of course.
So, folks, if you haven't done it already, I would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get updates every time we get a new episode. And without further ado, let's get into our show. So, Cliff, would you mind giving our audience a little background on you, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from the East Coast in Washington, D.C., Chocolate City. I went to music
Woo!
school at Berkeley and Boston. And
Did you
since then,
really? I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. And so
I
I've
played there.
been
I competed there.
awesome. That's amazing. When was that?
That was back in the late 1900s, probably like 1988. We were at the jazz festival there at Berkeley, and my band band I was with was like one of the big bands for jazz. It was amazing. I loved being there. It was a great experience. Of
Uh,
course, just being in that area was just like wow. But sorry, I cut you off, but that was exciting for me.
No, yeah, no, it's hollowed halls for sure. People like Quincy Jones and later now Esperanza Spalding and so many in between. I was just thankful to be there. So I graduated high school early at 16 and I went to
Wow.
Berkeley. So I graduated with my bachelor's there at 19 and then I moved right after I turned 20 to LA. And I've been in LA ever since, over 20
Wow.
years doing music but always working in the corporate world in some capacity. And so I'm vice president of a digital marketing firm now, and I run a very cross global team in the beauty industry. But I learned
Mhm.
this secret sauce of basically, as a musician, when I was full time, it was feast or famine, as you know. And so basically, I learned how do you build these four walls? How do you build a foundation so that when you decide the projects you want to do, you can greenlight yourself and you don't have to worry about like, am I going to be a starving artist? And I never starved a day in your life, as you see. I'm not a skinny person. And so it allowed me to later then create a book series called Side Hustle and Flow, where I had stumbled upon this secret of it's not about doing one thing or the other. It's have your cake, eat it too. Make a plan, have goals, and then know like what's the result you're trying to do, and then work backwards so that you can have the autonomy and the space to get it done. Because what I don't want is people to die with all these dreams inside them. But sometimes people are like, there's no perfect situation, so they never start. Or they're like, well, I can't do it full time, so I won't do it at all. And the all or
Right.
nothing approach doesn't work. It's like it's better to do 30 minutes a day, a few times a week, than never. And so that's basically what I've been championing the last couple of years. It's like that's how I did it with music and working full time. And people, it's not for the faint of heart for sure, but you
Mhm.
can do it. If you want it bad enough, you will always find a way.
I like the sound of that. I like the sound of that. Where does purpose fit into all of that? Because I know a lot of people say, hey, this is what I'm destined to do, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do that, no matter what. How does that jive with you?
I mean, I read in 2006 The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, and he was my
Mhm.
pastor at Saddleback Church for a number of years, and now retired. But he led me down this path of really understanding my purpose, my why. The Japanese have a word for it, ikigai. What am I here for? What am I good at? What does the world need from me? And so
Yes.
now my higher sense of purpose, beyond just being a musician, is I want to be the guinea pig and show you the way. I want to be the Harriet Tubman to say, this is the path to freedom. I've been there. Let me come back and now take you with me. Because it's not about what I see, it's about what I can make you see. My story is
Yeah.
only impactful till it impacts you to go do something. That's my whole point.
Mm.
So I've been working a lot purposely with kids, um, teenagers,
Mhm.
boys, men of color, to be
Mhm.
able to say, Everyone is creative. Don't let the devil or the world lie to you that you're not
Mhm.
creative. Because I meet many people who are like, I'm not creative because I don't do music or I don't do art. That's not
Right.
all creativity is. And if you say I'm not creative, then the universe will no longer send you anything creative. You have to open that channel, just like tuning a radio dial, to be able to have that come in clearly. And we all have it. In school, we have it when we start. So kindergarten, you ask all the class, do you want to draw? Do you want to dance? Do you want to sing? Do you want to paint? Everyone says yes. They're excited about the world. But then school and the system, it chokes the life out of you. By the time you get to senior, you have a lot of people that don't want to do anything because they don't want to stick out. They don't want to look foolish. They don't want to look dumb. They don't want to be ostracized from the group. But we need more weirdos in society because that's who you remember. The people who do something and stand out, that's who gets noticed. The people who play it safe and are basic, AI will replace them. That's how I feel anyway. So that's my purpose. It's
Wow.
like create it to create.
Wow, 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 that's amazing. Whenever we talk about like elementary school coloring, and I'm always going back to this. I think she was like my fourth grade teacher, where she would never put my picture on the board, and I was all this was like a whole year. It was just like, oh, whatever, whatever. I should be past that, right? That was like 40 some odd years ago, but just one of those things that stick in my head. So
Yeah,
you said a few. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, my kindergarten teacher said she would never teach again because I was so terrible. I had great grades except for behavior. And behavior, I was like abysmal. But what now we know is that I was a creative. So I would always get in trouble because I would just wander off. I would be thinking deeply about something and I just did my own thing. And I'd be like, I'm
Yeah.
going off to read, I'm going to do this. He's like, it's not time for that. I was like, well, it's the time for me. So I was very opinionated and strong-willed as a kid. But she didn't think I would amount to much, but I proved her wrong, and her lessons did come in handy. I learned to behave a little bit better.
A little bit better. I still don't color in the lines, man. I got to tell you.
Yeah,
you
me
know,
too.
I love what you said about like everybody being creative. Um, and I love working with creative people. I'm one of those people that I call myself like a logical creator. It's like I'm more of the engineering type. You give me a problem and come up with a solution. And so it's almost like there's different. I don't know. I kind of see like different areas, if you will, of creativity where you've got when I think about business in particular, I think about the people that are like really visionary. They're just like totally like they're picturing a different world. And you have people below that are working with those people that have, that see that different world, say, okay, this is how we can get it done. Then you have other people that, are quote unquote below that, or we can call it different, that have their whole role in the process. Do you see something like that, or do you see the world a little bit differently, or?
Oh yeah, no, we have historical evidence that it's like that. You look at Henry Ford, he was like that. He was the visionary. He said when he was making cars, if he asked people what they wanted, they would just say faster horses. People don't know what they want until you show it to them sometimes. And so same with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs didn't make the iPhone. He had the ideas. But he wasn't the technician, the person who was trying to make it say hello. That was the engineer. That wasn't Steve Jobs. But Steve Jobs was brilliant in that he had so many amazing creative ideas. You want to take 1,000 songs with you. This is how you do it. Um, when he came back to Apple after being kicked out of his own company and having to start what now became Pixar and selling that to Disney next, what they begged him to come back because they weren't the $1 trillion company at that time they are now, and
Mhm.
he said, "We don't have any money to make anything new. What we're gonna do is we're gonna give people creatively options they never had." And what did he do? He said, all this gray and beige and black, we're going to make bright colors. And he came out with those iMacs in the late 90s that you can get orange and blue. No one had ever thought people cared about the personality and what that meant to them as a
Yeah.
product. And so Apple became the cool, sleek, fun, interesting product, not the Bill Gates, Microsoft, IBM product. But even with Microsoft, Bill Gates was so great at asking the right question. Tony Robbins said when he wanted to become Microsoft, he asked, how do I become the software that runs the world. And by asking a big question like that, he went to IBM and said, I have software for you. He did not have
Mm,
software for them at that time, but he knew he could.
mm,
And so that's sometimes what a visionary person will do. They can see it long before it's
yeah,
coming. Those people can also anticipate the market shifts and pivots before other people. Foresight is part of creativity too.
yeah, 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 definitely, definitely, definitely. I love that. I love that. You said a couple of things that kind of resonated with me. You talked about how the universe gifts us, or we can turn our backs on the universe and not use that creativity. You talked about, being able to green light ideas or projects and being successful with them. Tell me more about that because that's something I actually had a conversation with a guy about it an hour ago, and he was saying something similar to that, and it was really interesting because we I think sometimes as entrepreneurs we get it with that more is better, do, and it doesn't necessarily. And what he was saying is it doesn't really leave space for us to kind of receive and be able to download that thing that we're supposed to be doing, or that creativity, or what are your thoughts on that? Where does that sit with you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you are the master of your own fate and captain of your own ship. So you need to be able to greenlight yourself. Whether you do crowdfunding and build prototypes, whatever it is, there's going to come a point where someone's not going to see your vision, and a bank may
Uh-huh.
not want to invest in that right away, or people won't want to buy it. You have to kind of now bring something to market. You have to pull an idea out of your head in front of your face
Yeah,
so that people can talk about it and see it. Because otherwise, they don't
yeah,
know what you're talking about, and by able to green light it yourself, it just means that you can bootstrap, you can fund it to a certain point, because if you don't, then we're not going to get to that minimum viable product so people can see it, play with it, and then you can get investment. So if you go to Shark Tank, they're going to be like, well, what do you have? What can you do? You can't just like, I have an
yeah,
idea. No one's going to buy that. An idea with no execution, with no process, with no systems is not something that you can invest in as a qualified investor. You're going to be looking at like, what have you done? And what can you do? Like some people
yeah.
are very early on, like I believe in an idea, you've built trust, but it's still going to be based historically on something else you've done. There's very few
Yeah,
people who are just like, here's a lot of money, go do this thing. We have no idea what it is and if it will work, unless they're just gambling, which can be possible. But most of the time, so in music, you used to have to wait for a record deal, and the record deals weren't great, but they would get you out there, but then you would owe a lot of money. So by being able to greenlight yourself, by being able to own your own songs, your own mastering, it empowers you as the artist. It empowers you knowing that you are a business, you are an entrepreneur. But more importantly,
yeah,
when those deals come, I've had music that was in a Cash App ad. I've had music that was in a BMW spot. I've had music that was on the CW and HBO and Max and Sci-Fi and Discovery Channel. I owned my stock to be able to do that. If I had to work with the label, they would have owned it, and I would not have controlled my destiny. And yes, you do it at a lesser extent to certain things, but I'm not
mhm,
beholden to anybody. And I didn't want
mhm,
that for myself. And a lot of people don't. If you want true autonomy, you want to be able to go where you want, when you want, do what you want, and call your own shots. And if you fail to your own accord, and that's why green
yeah,
lighting is important. But you see, in music with Jay-Z, he became what he became because he was selling CDs out of his trunk, because the
yeah,
record industry didn't want him. They didn't want Missy Elliott. They didn't want Lady Gaga. They didn't want the Beatles. Like James Brown did a live album. They didn't want that. So he funded it himself. You have to do that sometimes, because sometimes that's the only way to get your true artistic vision out there.
yeah, 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 yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I guess the other part to my question was, and maybe I'm assuming this is kind of along the lines of what you were talking about. You were talking about the universe giving us like creativity and ideas and that sort of thing. Is that did I catch that right or?
Yes. Yes, Elizabeth Gilbert, who did Eat, Pray, Love, she had another book, I think it's called Big Magic, but essentially she says that if you have all these ideas, if you don't use them, the universe will just push it to somebody else. That's why when you're watching TV, you see an infomercial, you're like, oh, that's something I thought of. I thought of a tool just like that. We all did because we all think
Uh,
about it. But if you don't act on it, if you don't execute, if you don't bring it to market, then you just had an idea. That's why great people who are creative, they keep a creativity list and they give ideas away for free. Because I know I have more ideas than I can ever execute in a lifetime. I want to give it to someone
wow,
who can actually do something with it. And the
wow,
universe, like Maya Angelou said, you can never run out of creativity. The more you tap into it, the more you have. That's the truth. So if you keep asking the universe to show you the secrets of the universe and to send you creative ideas, it will flood you with them, so many that you have abundance to give them away because you don't care. You
wow,
just want the seeds to be planted. If I had a bunch of apples, I can't eat them all the time. So I have to make them into stuff and I can't make it into enough stuff. I have to give them away because
yeah,
those seeds will die if I don't do anything with them. And we already know historically, you can save a seed now. The oldest plant was like a 2,000-year-old seed. They planted it, still grew. So seeds are powerful that you can plant them and they'll spring up in their own time, and someone else may water and nurture it. It doesn't have to always be you in every piece of everything. But
mm,
if you say, I'm not creative, then the universe will turn off that tap and nothing will come. And that's the problem. So it's like you want to turn that tap on, you have to change the channel. You
mm,
have to turn the dial. You have to get your
mm,
frequency in tune with that.
mm. How do you pick which ideas to plant and nurture yourself?
I mean, it's just like with any music, what likes and what you resonate with, right? So it's like when I'm doing a project, when excites me, when it gets me out of bed, when it's compelling, when I will when I will continue to do it, when the feeling to want to do it has faded, that's when I know
Hmm.
that that's a worthwhile idea to follow and to pursue. And sometimes you
Mm,
have to actually put your steps out there and pursue it, and you realize it wasn't that thing that you thought. And then you go back and you do something else. But you don't know that. People think that everyone has like a crystal ball and you can just guess every time what's going to work, but you don't. It's science. You have to create a hypothesis, run a sequence, look at the data, see if it's working or not, make adjustments. That's life. No one can know the the secrets of the universe to that level to be able to predict the future in the same way that nobody owns tomorrow. You just have to put on the work
yeah,
clothes, put one foot after another. Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase to take one step. I think the most part is
yeah.
that people don't take the step, and then the hardest part after that is that they don't finish. A lot of things get started and greenlit, but then you don't see it. People have gone through 7 years of medical school, never became a doctor. People get to that 1 yard line and they stop. And that's the worst. I have a friend right now that's doing that. She's almost a doctor. She's got to finish something. I'm like, you got to do it. You cannot get this close, have all the depth, and don't finish. Finish. So starting is hard because people won't, and then finishing is hard and people won't.
Wow. Have you always had this mindset?
I've always been curious around like what makes one person more successful than another since I was a kid. And I was a
Mm,
weird kid. When I wasn't misbehaving in class, I would listen to AM radio. So people like Les Brown and Armstrong Williams and DC, all these pundits. I would go to sleep listening to these people arguing and arguing. And I was like fighting in school for Ross Perot to win the election in 92. Of course, it was a Mondale sticker that was covered up by the caucus sticker. So that shows my age. But the important thing was I learned that people think deeply and ruminate on things, and when they meditate on them, that they get ideas. And when they talk to more people that are vibrating at that wavelength, they get even
mm,
better ideas when you work with teams and
mm,
you build synergy. And so I was just like, well, how do all of these self-made millionaires start from nothing? And I had this
mm,
album. It was a quote from, I think, LeBron James, but it was like, we're all like just a kid from somewhere. We all
mm,
start with nothing. We all start with babies getting slapped on the back and having to figure out the world. No matter if we had a silver spoon or a spork in our mouth or nothing, we still have to start from that place. And so, yes, I think that as I started to get that mindset, a growth mindset, an expansive mindset, and a lot of times, especially for people of color, when you come from scarcity, when you come from lack, it's hard to adopt a growth mindset. But the universe, just like space, it's endless. Like we only know our galaxy. But there are galaxies we can't even see out there because it just keeps going and going. You can't imagine or fathom whatever higher power you describe to. Something that powerful created something so expansive, it's infinity and beyond. And so when you think that way, when you have a growth mindset, I can always constantly improve, then you
Mm,
can, because the Bible says your faith has healed you. Your belief in it makes it real. Perception is
mm,
reality. And once you walk out in that, then yes, if I believe that there's limitless potential, then there is. And if I believe there
mm,
isn't, then there isn't. That's the
mm.
difference of adopting a different mindset.
Interesting, interesting. It's really interesting as I'm listening to you. I'm hearing, like a metaphysical undertone. I'm hearing, you know, things that we can't put our fingers on. I mean, how do you really tap into that? I mean, it's like a lot of times, we say, okay, something is woo woo, or what, however we want to label it, because we can't necessarily understand it. But what is it? How do we get across that line where we're not just focused on what we can, sense with our five senses?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is tough for some people. I think some people are wired where they can only believe what they can see, what they can understand. But scientifically, if you think about it, we only use 10% of our active brain. So there's 90% we don't really understand or know anything about.
Uh,
And so with that, you have to understand that what you don't know can make a whole other world. And
uh,
so that's humbling, but importantly, it's like not everything has to be understood to be appreciated. There's many things that I don't understand, but I can still
yeah,
enjoy them. I can still appreciate it. It's not everything I need to know how the sausage is made. And that's where faith and belief come in. See, the
yeah.
reason why that is that, for me, I'm a Christian, but for whatever you subscribe to, essentially, I tell people God is not going to answer a prayer that you can do yourself. God is not going to step into something that's not a miracle. If it's a human thing, then you will find a way to do it. He's already given you the seeds to do that. And so faith allows you to step beyond that. When you now know that outside of that, I can't do anything on my own, that I need the higher power, then now you tap into infinity and beyond. I tell people all the time, I'm a laptop, I'm a phone. You think that you're doing it on your own until you drain your battery. But when you plug
Mm,
into the source, which is the
mm,
universe, now you have
mm,
limitless energy and potential. But you have to have
mm,
limits humanly because you wouldn't have to have faith in miracles otherwise. If everything could be
mm.
seen in the natural and done in the natural, then there would be no reason to have anything beyond that.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. That's powerful. It kind of puts a different, not even kind of, puts a different spin on things. The way that you approach, different situations. I always laugh. TD Jakes had this. He had this comment where he was saying, God makes trees. He doesn't make toothpicks. So like you're saying, it kind of gives us the resources. It's up to us to actually do something with what he gives us. I love that. I love that. It's like, wow. How has this played out most significantly in your life? And I'm saying from the perspective of, you have an idea, or you have a something that you want to accomplish, and you know that it's bigger than what you yourself can do.
I mean, luckily for me, I've had the blessings to pivot to so many different things and have success. So, as a musician, I always wanted to be a great musician. I sing, I play piano, I write songs, I produce, I have my own record company and licensing company. From that, though, there were other opportunities that came. Like, I had a podcast that then became my radio show, and I was also a house band on a TV show. And I wasn't thinking about doing any of those things or writing books. But when I said yes, and and just tried things, then I found
Uh,
and expanded my internal universe, my own locus of control, but also I stretched myself. I grew. So 10
uh,
years ago, I didn't have those things and I couldn't do those things. I wasn't ready for those things. But then when I said
uh,
yes and the opportunity came, I went toward that. So I think it's, whatever you think you do, I think everybody can do 5 more things. But you have to ask 5 whys to figure out what that is. And that could be
Yeah.
volunteering, that could be helping with your church, that could be being a parent.
Yeah.
When Lionel Richie wrote Once, Twice, Three Times the Lady, it's about his mom. It's about we are more than one thing all the time. You're a wife
Yeah.
and a mother and a sister and a friend. We're all onions. We have so many layers, but so many people stay in the superficial and they have to go deep. All
Yeah.
that growth happens when you go deep because you have to break past being, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable
Yeah.
because you won't grow in your comfort zone. Growth only happens in the uncomfortable parts because it has growing pains and it's very uncomfortable. You break through on the other side and it's growth and potential. But you have to chip away at that and do the inner work. Not everybody's going to do the inner work because taking those bricks out, dealing with pain and trauma and childhood and shoulda, coulda, wouldas and regret and what didn't happen. I tell
Mm.
everyone, you play the very first Mario, and what happens? You go left, you stop. Why? Because the past is the past. You can't go back there and do anything. Life is this way. You got to keep it moving forward, bro. If you want to get to the castle and find that princess, this way. Present is what we have. Future's too far to see. Just deal with the now. Get it done now. Start now.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Is this the change that you want to see in the world?
Oh my gosh, when you say that and you think of Gandhi or you think of Buddha, I don't even know. Even the Mother Teresa, I don't know. But yeah, it is that if everyone lived their best life, the world would be completely different. If everyone spent less time focusing on everyone else and everything else that's happening that's outside of your control and just focused on you and your control and your little sphere of influence, the world would be exponentially better. Because so many times people are worried about what's happening with politics, what's happening with TV shows. It's like, if you care that much, get out there, join your local politics. If you care that much, create your own TV show, sell it to Netflix, do something. But like, you can't just be a consumer and mindlessly just binging on stuff and being upset. So many times people are upset or afraid or something about stuff that didn't even happen. Just your
Mm.
mind is making it real and it's real to you. That's why
Mm.
when you watch a scary movie, you have all those responses. We know Freddy is not coming through the closet. He's not there with us in the room, but that's how you feel. And the mind doesn't distinguish between that or the other. In the same way, the mind, when it comes to negativity, if I say, don't think don't think about this podcast, don't think about it, whatever, not going well. Once you say that, your mind will start thinking about
Mm.
all the ways it won't go well. That's how the
Mm.
mind works.
Mm.
The mind is ChatGPT. Computers just replicate the human experience. We are already AI. You ask the universe
Mm.
a question, it'll spit out a bunch of solutions. That's what ChatGPT is. We are
Mm.
that. We were
Mm.
always that. But the difference is that it cannot create from scratch. That's a purely human thing, which is that if you become irreplaceable because you become more creative, AI can never do that. You have to tell it what you want to do, but no one
Mm.
has to tell you what to do. That's the difference.
Mm. Mm. I need some background music with you. It's like some rah rah. You're dropping it, man. I love it. I absolutely love it. What inspired you to write your books?
It's a funny story. So I started writing the first book in 2014. It was called originally From Fool to Fulfilled. I've always been like a lover of books. So in school, you know how you had like those bookmobiles come by and you get the stickers and your parents would buy you stuff. I would read. I stayed in the library because I was kind of a nerdy kid. I was small. I wasn't great at sports and I liked
Mm.
information. And so I would always read. And so I wanted to write something. So 2014, I started the path of interviewing some great thought leaders. I got to about 4 of them. And I was like, I'm not a writer. I'm an imposter. I'm a musician. I can't write. I don't know how to string these sentences together.
Oh
So I
no.
quit. And so I shelved the book for 6 years. And then in 2020, there's in the Asian culture, there's a word for crisis that also means opportunity. So the pandemic was that for me. In the middle of that storm, I knew myself. I was like, I will get depressed because I had no music shows. So I couldn't get
Uh-huh.
out and get to my fans and play anywhere. So I was like, I need a
Yeah.
project. I need something that I can do alone because I don't know how long I have to bunker down in this. And so I started taking some free classes they had that time to learn how to write. And then from there, organized the book. And it was called From Full to Fulfilled. Why is one person's life better than another? You know, where we all start from the same point. What was the difference maker? And then finally, that's
Mhm.
how it became Side Hustle and Flow. Side Hustle was like, how do you do the full time thing while building up the part time thing so that can later become the full time thing? But also the flow. As I started, as you said, getting into the more metaphysical, getting into Eastern philosophy, I started doing acupuncture and Tai Chi and Qigong, and they're all flow and breath work. My
Mhm.
acupuncturist would feel my pulse, and they were like, you know, for people who are creative, for people who are doing a lot of things, they feel your pulse, and it's kind of thready. And they said, you don't breathe. Not like I didn't breathe naturally, but you don't deep breathe. You don't stop to breathe. You're
Mhm.
doing so much, you don't breathe. So I was like, oh, the flow is important. When you look at water, like if it's flowing, then it's good and it's doing its job properly. If it stops, it
Mhm.
becomes stagnated. So it's not just about hustling alone, it's about working smarter and harder.
Mhm.
And now I have a component of
Mhm.
hustle harder, healthier, because I had like
Mhm.
deteriorated my health in the process of
Mhm.
trying to hustle all the time, thinking I
Mhm.
would come back to it.
Yeah.
And that's now what I've decided is the first ball to make sure you always keep. Because you can't give unless you have abundance. You can't give until your cup overflows. And a lot of times what happens is that people are not only taking out the overflow, they're taking from the cup. Then the cup is dry. Now they're taking from the teapot. They're just taking everything.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to learn how to, you know, keep your peace and your energy and your time. Doesn't mean you have to say
Yeah.
yes to everything. It doesn't mean everything is getting you towards your goal, but you have to
Yeah.
make the goals and the metrics to understand if that's getting me towards my goal or benign, and create that system around you. But yeah, it just
Yeah.
really over time I learned that music is one outlet to get a story across, but a book is a different audience and a different way to get it across. And as I did it as an audio book versus a regular book, different audiences. And so once you make a TV show or a film or a documentary, how people view that music video, they're all different mediums. The way people communicate and the way they learn adapts
Mhm.
to them. And so if you want to be able to reach the most people, you have to be able to cross different genres of mediums and methods to get it to them. It's like music has evolved from vinyl records to cassette tapes to the digital age, but music is still the same, but the method and the medium and delivery systems are different.
Yeah. 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 Cool. You mentioned a couple of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you I guess maybe gave the impression that you speak on like scarcity and wow.
Yeah. Yeah, scarcity and abundance for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the help. Yes, scarcity and abundance. What are your thoughts? Do you get do you first of all do you get into that into your book?
A little bit. I'm kind of moving towards that as we make a new book about reflections. But yeah, I mean, we definitely talk about it in terms of the growth mindset that, you know, if you believe in limitless potential, then it's out there and you'll find it, and your mind will start showing you how to make that work. And yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
my mentorship with men and with boys shows you that, you know, there comes a point where you have to kind of have radical acceptance of what didn't happen. Your parents did the best they could, or they didn't do the best they could. But either way, it's already happened to a point. The keys passed to you at some point, and what
Mhm.
didn't happen, whatever scarcity or lack you had, you can acquire and build knowledge and wealth and skills accordingly. And you see that
Yeah.
in the Bible, the parable of the talents. You have 5 talents that become 10, you have two that become four, and you have the person who buried the one. And the person who buried the one is most people. Most people bury their talent for many
Mhm.
reasons. They don't invest it. And that's the thing. You either spend your time and you don't know what happened to it, or you invest your time. But the time passes either way. A lot of times people are like, well, I wouldn't do it. It's going to take too much time. The time is going to go no matter what you do. So when I look back, I can look at the books, I can look at all the albums. I know what I did. I can
Yeah.
timestamp every decade, every year, the plan I had, the logic behind it, and it takes focus. If you focus light, it becomes a laser, it can cut through a diamond. But that's focus. If you're just a light bulb, yeah, it'll light up a room, but it's not going to cut through glass. There's a different level of intensity and focus, and that
Yeah.
comes from once you have that focus, they say keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your eyes on that this goes further than I'm ever gonna see in the natural, and I can get much further. So when I created a plan in 2013, I said I want to release 10 albums in 10 years, which I did by 2022. I didn't know how to make one, but I did that because I knew if I made the goal really far and I got halfway there, I was still gonna have five. And at that point, I had zero. So when you think about the limitless potential, you can go farther than you think, but you need to force yourself to think past what you could see, knowing that something is there. I might be looking for water in the desert and go over mountain, never see anything, and then finally get to an oasis. I did not see that from the dirt back there, but it was
Yeah.
always there. But I have to make the steps and the journey to know what's
Yeah.
behind hill 2, 3, 4. And not everybody's going to do
Right.
that, but that's the way that it works.
Wow, 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 wow. I just had so many thoughts, around what you were saying. Um, I think the one thing that stood out to me the most is I hear people, and this kind of goes back to like prayer or the metaphysical side of things, and I love the way that you honor that, but you also honor the work that goes along with that. It's not just like, oh, I've downloaded an idea. It's like I've downloaded an idea, and this is what I'm going to do, and these are the things I have to do, and it's still going to be hard. And I'm still crossing the desert. I'm still, I don't know what's, as you said, I don't know what's on the other side of that hill. I don't know that that oasis is there, but I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I loved the story with your record album. You're going to do 10 albums in 10 years. You didn't know you didn't know where to start. I mean, if we did that, as people more often, hey, and I have that too. It's like, hey, I want to open up a bed and breakfast. It's like, yeah, I've got some of the skills, but I don't have all the skills. I've never run a hotel. But it's something that's out there, and it's something that, like you said, it's like I'm envisioning it there, and I'm going to do the things that it takes to get me there. I love that. I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Anything else in the book or in the books that you want to share with us that you think we really need to know before the end of our show?
Yeah. So speaking of your bed and breakfast, the thing is that I explain to many people in consulting, the end of the book, as I do get to the thought leaders that I interviewed, is having mentors, finding people who have forged that path because success leaves clues and learning from them. So you may not have worked in hotel or hospitality, but many people have. And someone who has knows how to build an ecosystem around that. You don't have to know all the parts. In fact, as an owner, you shouldn't know all the parts because if you know what they know, you don't need them. Then you are going to be having the big ideas. It's like you're the Steve Jobs and now you need all the engineers. And yes, you'll learn pieces of it as you go, but you don't need
Uh-huh.
to have all those pieces to actually get it up and running. You may also buy into a business that already has a system that exists. That's how network marketing and MLM and stuff like that works. But the main thing is that the mentors are out there. I worked with score.org to have a mentor to build my record label. It's free to anybody. It's all retired people, and all they want to do is volunteer and give their secrets away. Like I said,
Yeah.
people who are creative have a lot of ideas. When people get to a certain season of life where they know they're not going to live forever, they start mentoring and giving back and planting
Yeah.
seeds under a tree they will never sit under or have shade or sustenance from, knowing that we are not going to stay on this earth forever. And so you be amazed when you put it out there. One, the team and people you can attract to that idea who have the gaps and the experiences you don't have, but also the person who's been at that level, who started where you were, who's now at the end, who can tell you this worked, this didn't work, this is what I did when I was in your stage, this is how I got the knowledge, this is how I filled the gaps. They'll walk you through those steps. And there's always a mentor who's been where you were and knows exactly. That's why I said there's always a Harriet Tubman who has now gone to freedom and came back and can tell you how to do it. The thing I
Right.
don't like, and I explain in the book, is I'm always patient zero. I'm guinea pig. I will never tell you to do it. If I didn't do it, have success and tell you what worked and didn't work. If it's just a theory, I'll tell you, but I will preface it. I have never done this. You need to go find someone who did that. But I can tell you in theory it'll work. But everything works in theory. Communism
Mhm.
works in theory. You can't, when you get off the paper in the real world, it's a different world. So you have to be prepared for that. But go find the people who have done it, learn from them. Podcasts like yours, learn from every person that you speak to and everyone listening to it speaks to, because you will learn. You don't have the life experience or lifetime to make all the mistakes. And if you do, it'll take up your whole life. So learn from someone who already did it. And that's the life hack. That's the true secret of getting a leg up, because they've already done it. When Thomas Edison made the light bulb, it took 10,000 experiments. I can just turn on the light and say, thank you. I don't need to make 10,000 experiments to make that work.
Right. You know what? You know what has bothered me, or I don't, scared is not the right word, but what's bothered me sometimes with people I've gone to for mentorship is, and you may have experienced this yourself, but they didn't think as big as I did. I'm sitting here going, let's build a rocket ship, and they're like, okay, let's build a model. I'm like, no, I want to go to Mars. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, you can't go to Mars, blah 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 blah. I mean, have you run into that?
Yeah. Yeah, some people think small. And so you have to realize, just like if you were going to go find a therapist, sometimes you talk to them, you're like, I don't jive with this person, right? Not every person who could be a mentor is the mentor that you need. Now you have learned, I need a mentor who thinks big. So now when I'm vetting and going through that process of finding the person, my first question is
Mhm.
like, how do you think big? And when they show that to me, I know that's the person I need to talk to. You will find other
Mm,
nuggets of wisdom from these people, but only to a point. But you'll still have to
right.
find someone who thinks big. Because there's always someone, when Kennedy said put a man on the moon, that's thinking big. We didn't have technology. They might affect it. But the thing is, he made us believe in something. And so sometimes there are people like that, and that's not everybody. Some people are functional, tactical, small. Some people are big thinking, but then they're not execution, and they're different mentors. And that's why you don't have to have one. You have several. That's why you build a board of directors, because you need the synergy of a lot of minds. And then the collective group is always better than the sum of any individual part.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I've literally had to like get away from people. Just like, oh, I'm just so sorry. I like you. I respect you, but you're we're not on the same train, buddy. I'm so sorry.
But the thing is, no matter who
Cool.
you talk to, even if learning what not to do is still important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You have a giveaway that you talked about when we spoke last. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so everyone who signs up on our site, there is a 10-page quick start guide to the Shape Up book, the second book in the series. Again, learning how to hustle harder, healthier. So you can apply everything from the first book in terms of goals and getting everything out there. But this will kickstart people I know, especially after a certain age. I'm over 40, who want to be younger, want to be more fit. Because the thing is that the more stamina and energy you have and vitality you have, the more you can get done. And I did not know that 10 years ago. So I was getting a lot done, but now I'm like, I was 10x, now I'm 20x, because I have the
Right.
energy. I lost over 50 pounds, and this quick start guide will show you how you can reverse disease and get healthier.
Amazing, amazing. I love that. I love that. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, where do they need to go?
But they can always go to the website, sci-hustleandflow.net. You can email me, Cliff, at sci-hustleandflow.net as well. We have a blog, 5 articles every week, posting up there weekly. You can also DM me on any social media at Cliff Beach Music, Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky. It will get to me, and I will get back to you. And let's grow up together.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, Rick, thank you so much for the opportunity of speaking to your audience. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for thinking big. I have no doubt that you will figure out how to get all these things done, and you're going to have the best bed and breakfast this world has ever seen. And not only one, a chain.
I love
everywhere
it.
and give people opportunities to get into your big dream. The main thing after that that I want to remind your audience is that you either have big dreams or you work for someone who does, and you have to decide what you want to do.
Whoa. All right. I love that. I love that. Cliff, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed it. And I love learning new stuff, and you've given me a lot to chew on. So I appreciate that.
Awesome, Rick. Hopefully we'll talk again in the future. All blessings to you. Anything that I can do to help, please reach out anytime. Looking forward to continue listening to your podcast. I learn something every time.
Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. Folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We will catch you next time.